Mhm. It is very tight. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Bonnet Springs Park. My name is Josh Henderson, and I am the park CEO. On behalf of our board of directors, donors, staff, volunteers, and community partners, thank you for attending today. We are honored to host this event and grateful for everyone who has helped make it possible. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce the Secretary of the United States Department of Health and Human Services, the Honorable Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Thank you, Josh, for that introduction, and thank you to Senator Ashley Moody, who's played a key role in this effort, Representative Laurel Lee, Representative Kamik, for your leadership and for standing with us today, both of you. I also want to recognize Representative Scott Franklin. Although he couldn't be here today, he played another key role of leadership in this initiative, and his wife, Amy, is here to represent him. I'm also grateful to Florida Commissioner of Agriculture, Weldon Simpson, Shannon Shepp, the Executive Director of the Florida Department of Citrus, for joining us today. And I want to recognize the Florida Farm Bureau, the Florida Citrus Processors Association, the Florida Citrus Mutual for their partnership and their unwavering support of the Florida growers. I also want to point out that I pointed out earlier that I have a very strong connection to the orange industry. My wife was the Orange Blossom Queen of the Tallahassee Day Parade, and she grew up on an orange grove in Frostproof, Florida. So I'm especially excited about today's announcement. I want to thank also my friend and colleague, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who I was with in Tampa yesterday. She couldn't be here today because of a prior obligation in Texas. But she played a key role in bringing this to the attention of President Trump at the request of Senator Ashley Moody. And President Trump said, let's get this done. And we have gotten it done. Finally, my thanks to Acting FDA Commissioner Kyle Diamantes, who made this happen. And I want to thank him for his leadership on this and many, many other issues. American farmers, the American citrus industry have no better friend than President Trump. President Trump wants Americans eating American food and drinking beverages grown from American-made fruit. He wants strong supply chains that protect U.S. agriculture, and he wants American businesses to succeed against foreign companies. That's why today I'm announcing FDA's final rule for modernizing the outdated standard of identity for pasteurized orange juice. This rule, delivers a decisive victory for American farmers. It protects our domestic supply chains and advances President Trump's America First agenda. For more than 80 years or 60 years, federal regulations have required pasteurized orange juice sold in the United States to contain at least 10.5 degrees Brix, which is a measurement of dissolved sucrose. But hurricanes, citrus greening disease, and other extraordinary events have devastated Florida's historic citrus groves, naturally reducing the sugar content of many Florida oranges. Even though Florida growers continue to produce high-quality fruit, orange juice companies have had to import higher sugar content oranges, mainly from Brazil, but other foreign countries, in order to satisfy these outdated requirements. The regulations hurt our economy, drove up costs, they cost American jobs, and unnecessarily force higher sugar levels in orange juice, which is something that we don't want. That outdated regulation is something that the Trump administration wants to cut, along with its other efforts to cut red tape by lowering the minimum BRICS levels from 10.5 degrees to 10 degrees. This long overdue reform will reduce our dependence on foreign imports, unleash American agriculture, and save the industry more than $60 million every year. It strengthens American supply chains and levels the playing field for American citrus growers and maintains the safety and quality and taste of this American product. That is the American First policy in action, guided by gold standard science. That's how we grow our economy. That's how we support our farmers and U.S. businesses. And that's how we give Americans access to real food that they can trust as we make America healthy again. Please join me in welcoming my colleague and friend, Acting FDA Commissioner Kyle Diamantes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor to be back in my home state of Florida, standing alongside so many dedicated champions for American agriculture. I want to give a special thanks to Secretary Kennedy, Senator Moody, Congresswoman Lee, Congresswoman Kamik, and all of our incredible local citrus growers and industry leaders who have joined us here today, including Wilton Simpson. I also want to give a shout out to USDA Secretary Rollins. Again, as Secretary Kennedy mentioned, she could not join us today, but played a very pivotal role in supporting today's initiative. As a native Floridian, being here today is personal for me. Growing up in this great state, I've seen firsthand how vital the citrus industry is to our communities, our culture, and our economy. Florida's citrus industry drives nearly $7 billion in annual economic impact and employs more than 30,000 hardworking Americans. But that number is a fraction of what it once was. For too long, our local growers have faced an uphill battle through no fault of their own. Between the devastating toll of citrus greening disease and the compounding wreckage left behind by hurricanes, the agricultural reality on the ground has fundamentally shifted. Over time, challenges have naturally lowered the BRICS level of our great Florida oranges. Yet, as Secretary Kennedy mentioned, for over 60 years, our federal regulations have failed to evolve to account for this reality. The FDA's outdated orange juice standard of identity, think of a standard of identity as a recipe outlining what a product must contain, hasn't been modernized since 1963. And until today, at 8:45 this morning, required a minimum BRICS level that became increasingly impossible for domestic growers to meet through no fault of their own. This rigid, obsolete rule did nothing to protect consumers, and it severely harmed domestic production, particularly right here in Florida. It effectively forced manufacturers to turn away from the Sunshine State and rely on foreign imported oranges just to meet an arbitrary federal number. In fact, foreign imports climbed to nearly 90% of the market share as a result of FDA's inaction. Today, under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, and through the support of this congressional delegation, FDA is proud to fix that inequity. As part of our aggressive deregulatory agenda, we are cutting the red tape that holds American workers back. As Secretary Kennedy announced a few minutes ago, we've officially updated this morning the standard of identity to lower the minimum BRICS requirement to allow more Florida oranges to be used for orange juice right here. Earlier we were talking, and Matt Joyner referenced that this was the only commodity where you could pull an orange off of a tree, squeeze it into a cup, and couldn't call it orange juice. That is now changed for good here in the state of Florida. So this common sense shift matches today's agricultural realities on the ground. It saves juice manufacturers tens of millions of dollars a year and guarantees that the taste and quality consumers love remains unchanged. And most importantly, this action actively supports, protects, and creates American jobs, including right here in Central Florida. I want to again thank Secretary Kennedy for his tremendous leadership on this issue, as well as the entire Florida delegation. And with that, I'll turn it over to my friend, Senator Ashley Moody. Thanks.
And fellow Floridians.
Fellow Floridians.
This is a great day for the state of Florida and for the Florida orange. And just to put this in perspective, the Florida orange, which is on every Florida license tag driving around the state, over the past 2 decades, the production of the Florida orange has gone down 90 to 95%. And what that means is while our growers might have stood a chance with this crazy, nonsensical, outdated regulation before greening or before freezes, while you're trying to survive throughout that, you certainly can't have kudzu of overburdening regulations snuff out the very remaining life that you have. And when Governor DeSantis appointed me to the Senate seat, I said, I'm going to go to Washington and fight for this state and fight for our industries and fight for our families and take a machete to the administrative bureaucracy that is actually working against the prosperity of our families. And this is one of the best examples I could find. The growers came to meet with me within the first month, and they said, we've been trying to get somebody to pay attention to this regulation that makes absolutely no sense, that makes us have to import Brazilian oranges to make Florida orange juice. And we can't get anybody to change this. Will you file the bill? I'm like, absolutely. I'll be the lead sponsor in the Senate. Scott Franklin was the lead in the House. We have these awesome ladies leading the charge. And then I said, this is a bureaucratic problem. I'll fight for this bill. Fine, we can pass a law, but all we need is for this agency to start thinking about Americans first, America growers first. What a novel concept as a country to think of your citizens and your industries first. And when I explained this to the president, it took him 10 seconds to get it and say, we've got to change this rule. And so I'm so grateful to Secretary Kennedy and to Secretary Brooke Rollins, who didn't just sit there and listen and shake their heads and say, we get it. They didn't just start complaining with everybody else and lamenting the state that we found ourselves. They said, this makes no sense. We're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to change the darn rule, because that's what we can do within our power as an agency for our people. Because somewhere along the line, the US government has stopped working for the people. It is a government by and for the people, but we keep forgetting that last part. And so I am so happy to have been a part of leading the Defending Domestic Orange Juice Production Act, but more importantly, getting in there, digging in, working with the agencies. And you heard Secretary Kennedy say, for everything that they're passing, they're trying to do away with needless regulations that are stifling the prosperity and growth of this country. Because here is what this administration understands. If we grow it here or manufacture it here, or we need to grow it here or manufacture it here for the safety and strength of our country, let's get it done. I'm so happy to be your United States Senator for the great state of Florida, where we're getting it done. Thank you so much.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laurel Lee, and I am proud to represent Florida's 15th Congressional District, which is where we are here gathered today. I want to begin by thanking Secretary Kennedy for traveling to Florida and for his leadership on this important proposal. I also want to thank President Trump for his commitment to supporting American agriculture and ensuring that federal policy keeps pace with science, with innovation, and with common sense. I also want to recognize Senator Moody and Congressman Scott Franklin, whose leadership on this issue in Congress helped pave the way for today's announcement, along with Congresswoman Kamik, our Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson, and the citrus growers, processors, and industry leaders whose dedication and commitment helped make this day possible. Across agriculture, nutrition, and public health, this administration has shown a willingness to modernize government, remove unnecessary barriers, and ask a simple question: does this policy serve the American people? President Trump and Secretary Kennedy understand that a healthier America begins with a stronger American food supply. Supporting our farmers and expanding access to wholesome American-grown foods go hand in hand. Today's announcement is another example of that leadership. Florida citrus is one of America's greatest agricultural success stories. It is part of our history, part of our economy, and our identity. Here in Central Florida, generations of families have built their lives around this industry and continue to produce some of the finest orange juice anywhere in the world. For generations, Florida orange juice has set the standard by which orange juice is judged around the world. Today's proposal helps ensure that our federal standards reflect that same excellence. One of those federal standards, known as the BRIC standard that you've heard about today, measures the natural sugar and soluble solids in orange juice and helps determine how it is labeled and used. More than 60 years ago, the FDA established a minimum BRICS level of 10.5%, a standard that reflected the characteristics of Florida citrus at that time. But today, Secretary Kennedy and the FDA have proposed updating that standard from 10.5 to 10%. It's a change that reflects today's agricultural realities while preserving the outstanding quality of our products. Agriculture is constantly evolving. As science advances and farming practices adapt, good policy should evolve as well. That's how innovation works, and good government should never stand in its way. Consumers will continue to enjoy the same wholesome, nutritious, high-quality Florida orange juice they've always known, while more Florida-grown fruit will qualify as juice. That means more opportunities for our growers, more American-grown products on our shelves, less reliance on imported juice, and a stronger future for one of Florida's signature industries. President Trump, Secretary Kennedy, and the FDA deserve tremendous credit for taking an approach that strengthens one of America's iconic agricultural industries, while ensuring consumers continue to enjoy the outstanding product that they always have trusted. American farmers deserve every opportunity to compete, succeed, and lead where the products that they grow begin here at home. This change today is a testament to determined advocacy. I especially want to thank Congressman Scott Franklin, Florida Citrus Mutual, the Florida Farm Bureau, and the many growers across our state who never stopped making the case for Florida citrus. Many of them are here with us today, and their work helped make this change possible. When farmers, industry leaders, Congress, and the administration work together, we can solve real problems with smart, common sense solutions. Today, we build on the success of Florida citrus, creating more opportunities for American growers, strengthening domestic production, reducing reliance on foreign imports, and securing this iconic industry. It is now my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Representative Kamik.
Well, good afternoon. It is such a pleasure to stand here with, and to be candid, titans that have moved mountains. And it may seem like a small thing, but to the family farm that has been operating here in the Sunshine State generation after generation, and they're having conversations around their kitchen table of whether or not they're going to start selling off pieces of the family operation to make it a housing development, which us as Floridians, we are all too aware of, with more than 1,000 people a day moving here. This is massive. This is a mountain, and it is a big difference to those families and all Americans who rely on Florida to feed them. Because the fact remains that every winter, Florida farmers and ranchers feed 193 million Americans. And it is absolutely ludicrous that in the face of a wild government, out of control regulatory regime, input costs through the roof, a number of challenges outside of our control, that we couldn't make this fix happen. But it was through the grit and determination of the people standing behind me, an administration that had vision and people at the top of their mind that made this a reality. So I want to commend Secretary Kennedy and Acting Commissioner Diamantis, as well as President Trump and Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins for their not just leadership, but their vision. They really do believe in healthy, fresh, and affordable food. This is one more step that they have taken in the line of many that really does execute on the MAHA agenda. And so I couldn't be more proud to stand here as the lone representative for Florida on House Agriculture. For years, we have worked to support the citrus industry, working with these individuals behind me to not only find ways that we can address citrus greening through research and development through the greatest university that the world has ever seen, the University of Florida. Go Gators. Yeah. No matter where you go, there's always a Gator in the room, and y'all know that. Gator Nation is strong, baby. But through the R&D that we have worked to secure and keep going as we work to try to find cures for citrus greening, which here recently there was an announcement through the EPA that new rootstock would be available in order to treat this disease. This is the thing that we have needed to do. Stop importing Brazilian citrus. Put Florida farmers first. This is an outdated regulation that served no purpose. And so it is incredibly encouraging to see just another regulation taken off the books that some unelected, nameless, faceless swamp creature up in Washington really had no clue the impact that it was having. I would also like to highlight that in this farm bill that was passed by the House of Representatives earlier this year, Florida, well, we made out like bandits. And it says volumes of the team that is standing here today who recognizes the importance of Florida when we talk about our food supply, which, as we all know, is national security. This may seem like a small thing, but it is a big thing, not just to the families who produce our citrus, but to the people who consume all around, not just the nation, but the globe. And I want to again thank the incredible Trump administration for their vision, their grit, their work ethic, but all of my amazing partners, from Jeb being the president of Florida Farm Bureau, my colleagues, Florida Citrus Mutual. Wilton, you've been a titan for Florida agriculture, and I am just so honored and blessed to stand here. You can't imagine the fights that we have had in committee over this and explaining it to people, and even those that want to be opposed to it, they're like, well, yeah, that really doesn't make much sense. So today is a win for so many. Citrus, Florida, farmers, and, well, common sense. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say, welcome to the Sunshine State. Go Gators. And it is my pleasure to introduce our Commissioner of Agriculture, Wilton Simpson.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. I want to thank Secretary Kennedy, President Trump. You know, in Florida, we have worked very, very hard to bring common sense solutions to agriculture, and especially in the last few years. And we've got many tools in our toolbox. One of those tools is our Rural and Family Lands Program, where we buy development rights from farmers so that we know that 50 years from now or 100 years from now, we will still have adequate farmland. When you think about citrus specifically, just in the last 4 years since I've been commissioner, we have provided over $300 million for research and the CRAFT program to help replant citrus trees. We believe that we have bottomed from about 280 million boxes down to about 12 million boxes of fruit. We think we're at the bottom. And now with all the new plantings that are going on, and thank you to our legislature here in the state of Florida for those additional dollars. We also had additional dollars to provide for the manufacturing facilities that we're going to need to put this orange juice in the containers in just a few years when we're hopefully producing 20 or 25 or 30 million boxes of fruit again. And we want to see this industry continue to thrive. I always normally don't have a lot of good things to say about the federal government because there's not a lot of common sense to it. But what Secretary Kennedy's done, what our senators and representatives have done here is common sense. What they've done is they put the air behind the sails of our farmers here in Florida that have been so resilient to know that if you plant these trees and you provide for those trees for 3 to 4 years and you develop a crop, you'll be able to put it in an orange juice container. So thank you for being here today and thank you for what you do. Matt.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am, as mentioned, Matt Joyner, the Executive Vice President and CEO of Florida Citrus Mutual. It's a pleasure to be with y'all Today, we are the state's largest trade organization dedicated to the well-being of the Florida citrus grower and also to sustaining Florida's iconic citrus industry. Secretary Kennedy, Acting Commissioner Diamantis, it's an honor to welcome you to Florida. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for your leadership on this critical and important issue. I also want to thank Senator Moody, Congresswoman Lee, and Congresswoman Kamik for your leadership and support of the Florida citrus industry. And while Congressman Franklin couldn't join us today, I do want to thank him because he was the original sponsor in the House of the Defending Domestic Orange Juice Production Act back in 2023 when we started this battle. And so we are grateful for his leadership in championing this issue as well. Nearly 4 years ago, Florida Citrus Mutual, the Florida Citrus Processors, the Florida Department of Citrus filed a citizens petition to modernize the standard identity for pasteurized orange juice. And we're pleased to see that effort come to fruition today. Growers have faced tremendous challenges over the last 2 decades, from citrus greening to adverse weather that has impacted our production and really put this industry at a critical point. Lowering the BRICS requirement, this small tweak to an outdated regulation, can have an outsized impact on an industry that is regaining its footing, has struggled for years, and is ready to once again truly blossom. And so I can't overstate the importance and our thankfulness for the strong support that we've received from our congressional leaders, from the Trump administration, Secretary Kennedy, and others to make this happen. It's been a long time coming, and we're grateful that we're finally here. So thank you. And with that, I'll introduce my friend, Jeb Smith, the president of the Florida Farm Bureau.
Well, good afternoon to all, and I am batting cleanup, but I can tell you what, a lot of home runs have already been hit this afternoon, that's for sure. But on behalf of 132,000 member families of the Florida Farm Bureau Federation, I want to thank all of you for your support and commitment to Florida agriculture. You know, I want to begin by thanking Secretary Kennedy and Acting Commissioner Diamantis, Senator Ashley Moody, Congresswoman Kat Kamik, Congresswoman Laurel Lee, and Congressman Scott Franklin, as well as the Trump administration, for recognizing an issue that Florida citrus growers have been raising for years and moving to address it with urgency needed. For too long, outdated regulations, which you've already heard this afternoon, have failed to reflect the realities facing Florida citrus. Citrus greening has changed our industries in ways no one could ever have imagined when many of these standards were written decades ago. Updating the minimum BRIC standard is about modernizing regulations so they reflect today's science and today's growing conditions. This common sense change allows processors to rely more heavily on Florida-grown oranges instead of being forced to blend with imported juice simply to satisfy an outdated regulatory requirement. That's good for our growers. That's good for our processors. That's good for American agriculture. And that is good for our consumers who want to support Florida citrus and partake of an iconic, delicious beverage derived under the Florida sun. Secretary Kennedy has challenged our country to make America healthy again. Florida Farm Bureau shares the belief that healthy Americans begin with a strong American agricultural system. That means ensuring families have access to fresh, wholesome, nutritious foods grown by hardworking American farmers. Supporting domestic citrus production is an important part of that mission. And today's announcement demonstrates that supporting agriculture and promoting healthier choices can go hand in hand. I especially want to recognize Senator Ashley Moody. Since having arrived in the Senate, she has made this issue a priority, understanding that seemingly small regulatory changes can have an enormous impact on Florida farm families. Her leadership, your leadership, has been persistent, and the willingness to work directly with FDA have helped us to bring us to this moment. I'd also like to thank you, Amy, for being here. What a blessing it is. This congressman, please deliver our gratitude to him, who has been a tireless champion for Florida citrus and consistently elevated this issue in Congress. His partnership and commitment to reducing unnecessary regulatory burdens for all of our growers have been invaluable. Thank y'all as well, Congresswoman. Thank you to everybody who helped make this day possible. And thank you for your continued commitment to Florida Ag Citrus, the hardworking families who produced one of Florida's most iconic products. May God bless Florida agriculture, our Florida farmers and ranchers, and may God bless America. Thank you.
concludes our remarks section. We will now go into the Q&A portion. Just give us 1 moment to get our mics ready. Conrad in the back will be handing around mics, and I will call on you. Make sure that when you have your hand up and you're called on, that you say your full name, outlet, and that your question is related to the topic of today's press conference. So do you, Gary? One moment, sorry. We're connecting the mics.
Gary White from the Ledger. Can you hear me?
I don't think so.
Try one more time.
Can you hear me?
Not yet.
Testing.
This is like a Nextel commercial. I'm dating myself now. Exactly. Can you hear me now?
This one works. Here we go. Okay. All right. Let's try that again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Sir.
Gary White from the Ledger. I have 2 questions. You've mentioned the congressional bill and also FTA rules. So which is it that is resulting in this change? And then also, considering how much urgency there seems to be on this, why did the Trump administration not do this in his first term?
I can take the legal part of the question, although I think I'm not the only lawyer standing up here. So the way regulations work is those are generally passed. They're proposed. There's opportunity for notice and comment from people, and then there's a final rule. So what we're talking about today is the final rule announcement in which they're shifting the standard, the BRIC standard, from 10.5 to 10, and that just lowers the sugar content requirement to be identified as orange juice for orange juice production. It's a very slight change, no difference in taste or nutrition, but it certainly helps in us allowing us to use Florida oranges. So the proposed bill that Scott Franklin led in the House and I led in the Senate would have mandated that regulation change. But it didn't take me too long to figure out as a senator that the agency can do that because they're the ones that promulgated the rule in the first place. So I think this rule has been in place for a very, very, very long time. Decades, I think the 60s or 70s. I don't know why it wasn't changed previously, but I can tell you there were a lot of us that were speaking out about it in the last year since the Secretary Kennedy took over. And as soon as we explained that it made no sense in terms of nutrition or taste and that the agency could do something without any law change, they leapt into action, did a proposed rule, allowed for notice and comment. And then today's announcement, which is truly why it's a big announcement, is the final rule being put in place, officially lowering that from 10.5 to 10.
In answer to your second question, it'll probably surprise you, but there are a lot of irrational and crazy regulations in our government. We're working on getting rid of them as quickly as possible. President Trump was unaware of this regulation. The petition, first of all, the hurricanes and the freezing temperatures which happened between 2017 and 2024 really aggravated this issue. And the citrus growers did not petition until the last administration, to the Biden administration. And President Trump was unaware of this issue until Senator Moody brought it to his attention. Brooke Rollins was in that meeting. President Trump said, I want to fix this. They called me and we put FDA to work fixing it as quickly as we could.
Hi, Marilyn Parker, News Channel 8 in Tampa, Florida. First of all, I want to ask, how will you know when this is working for our farmers and seeing the actual production rates? Also, it seems, going from 10.5 to 10, for those who don't have any clue about bricks and sugar content and all this type of stuff, it sounds very, very small. And so can you expound on, give me an example of what that would actually look like? And if there will be any impacts that you're considering, especially when it comes to cyclospora and screwworms impacting the citrus industry at all? Have we thought about those things and those impacts? Can we get into that as well? Thank you.
I'll start with the last first. Screwworm, cyclospora is not an issue for the Florida citrus industry. Thank goodness. We have plenty of issues of our own. In terms of when this will impact the grower, it will be immediate because we'll be able to bring more fruit to the processors, irrespective of an arbitrary sugar content that's been dictated by a federal regulation that's been in place since the 60s. So that impact is going to be immediate, and it will help the growers this upcoming season. So we're very excited about it.
Louis Levy with the Business Observer. Can you quantify what the change will be? I mean, how many more boxes are we talking about? And when you say immediate, how immediate is immediate?
I don't know that I can quantify the number of boxes we're going to produce next season, much less how this will impact us. But I can tell you that based on the average bricks for the season, we will be able to take everything we have to the processing plants, and this should provide the ability to do that. And so we're very optimistic about that.
Hi, Jacob Berg, Epoch Times. I've got a question for Secretary Kennedy. So one of the main contributing factors, aside from the hurricanes and the freezes, on both the decline of the Florida orange industry and the subsequent lower sugar content in the oranges, has been from, as was pointed out early on in the press conference, citrus greening, which is caused by the invasive Asian citrus psyllid. Now that made its way in about almost 30 years ago now, but there's a lot of concern right now with other invasives coming in, screwworms coming back, things like that. And there were a few cuts to the main USDA agency that handles that last year, the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS. So I'm just curious, given, this is a really big issue for the state of Florida, this, Asian citrus psyllid, even though it's been a multi-decade long thing, there's all these other invasives that a lot of people are concerned about, feral pigs, even in this state and other states. So what I'm getting at is, I'm curious, have you had any discussions maybe with Secretary Rollins about maybe increasing resources at APHIS or, just bolstering existing efforts?
I mean, on screwworm, the issue with screwworm is that breeding programs for the screwworm predator were discontinued, and that the Central American governments did not have their own programs. So there was, although we eliminated screwworm back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s from the United States and Mexico, there was reservoirs of it waiting in Central America. Brooke is not here today, but she has dramatically increased the production of those anti-parasitic organisms, so that we are releasing them now all over Texas and all over Mexico, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you so much for being here today. It was wonderful to have all of you.